to the Dream 100 Show, the epicenter of influence, collaboration, and exponential growth. You're about to discover the power of relationships. Dream 100 relationships. And you're one relationship away from a totally different business and life. This is your host, Michael Tasner.
Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Dream 100 Show. Very special topic today. As the Dream 100 company continues to evolve, I finished out a document that I call a painted picture. And I've talked a little bit about this in previous episodes, but really it's casting a wide net of what does the next couple of years look like? And then it's writing it as if it had already happened. And one of the most interesting things that came about for the Dream 100 company as I finished this exercise was this concept of the Dream 100 life. And I wanted to use my kids as guinea pigs the last couple of weeks and start to float it. And I floated it in kind of some basic topics, and then I started to build from there. So I wanted to just talk this through, and I thought it'd be interesting for you to consider, and one of those that I definitely would love your feedback on. So we've talked about the Dream 100 as it applies to business, and that is, how do you land your Dream 100 media relations? So how do you get really great press and media contacts and get on TV and radio and print and all that great stuff? We've talked about landing your Dream 100 clients. So some of the best clients or customers that you want to serve and continue to serve for as long as you're in business. And then that third audience that we always tend to focus on, those Dream 100 strategic alliances, strategic partnerships, joint venture relationships. So people that have your ideal customers on their list or going to their business that they're going to ideally refer over to you. So we've talked about everything in a business sense. But what I did with my kids was I started to ask them questions like, where do you see yourself the next couple of years? And kind of those like, what do I want to be when I grow up? And one of my sons started talking about law, that he's kind of gotten interested in learning about the legal space. And my other son has always been interested in potentially pursuing the culinary aspect. And my younger daughter, like a lot of girls her age, said, I'm interested in teaching. And I said, okay, great. So we have the career thing that is currently top of mind. What else? So my one son started talking about lacrosse, that he plays lacrosse, and maybe I'd like to take that to another level. My other son plays travel baseball, and he talked about, well, I may or may not want to continue to pursue travel baseball, but if I did, that I'd love to play it in college. My other daughter talked about dance. Said, okay, great. So now we have kind of a sport hobby. And then I just kept digging. What else do you want your life to look like? And we talked about fitness and happiness and college and internships and travel and just all of these other areas across their life. And then I paused for a minute and I said, since I am grateful that you've shared a lot of these things, I said, let me share some things with you. And I started saying things like, talking about fitness. My 40th birthday is right around the corner, and I would be open and honest and say that I'm not in the shape that I need to be in and want to be in. So I talked about transforming fitness, and I talked about the financials, and I talked about kind of spirituality. So if you maybe even think about like that wheel of life, and I started like scoring and saying, well, I'd love to see more here with family, and I'd love to have these experiences with all of you kids, and we just talked through and just bounced a lot of ideas back and forth. What I didn't realize at the time was that each of those different baskets of topics, so like sports, and they fit really neatly. And what I was able to do was to take it and put it into the equivalent of Excel, Google Sheets, and then take a step back and say, great, if you want to go down this path, if you want to start having this in your life, and I wanted to have more fitness, instead of saying, what's the how behind it, or like, what's the next step, we started looking at who, and we started looking at adding the who to a what. So for me, example, if I said, okay, great, I want to transform my fitness. It's easy to say, okay, great, so you've got to exercise more, you got to do all these different things. And it also lines up with the book that I just finished this afternoon, matter of fact, of Who Not How. But we started to put names in these different buckets and say, okay, great. My son that was interested in travel baseball, if he wanted to take it to college and go down those paths, who potentially could help there? And then my other daughter who's dancing, well, if she wanted it to do that at another level, is it the current owner of the dance studio? Is there a different dance studio? Are there online instructors? Like, who are the people behind each of these different topics? Great, if you're interested in law and you want to potentially pursue that, who? And after we finished, we ended up having like 120 names that were largely all local. Not everybody is local, but largely local names. And we realize that if we start to build those relationships, you start to put the pieces together to have a Dream 100 life. So think about that for just a second. And I know that this is a little bit outside of what I've been talking about, but everything that I've been teaching you applies. So let's just pick one area for me, and I'll pick one for each of my kids. So on the fitness side, I wrote down a couple of different names. So I found a few people that were kind of well-known in the like jujitsu, mixed martial arts. There's one person that actually was a former UFC fighter. I wrote down the person that runs the YMCA, which is the fitness gym that we go to. And then I wrote down a couple of people that were nutritionists. I wrote down somebody from a place called Synergy Health. So I wrote down a bunch of names on the fitness side. I wouldn't want to only have one name. I want to have multiple. Now, if I were to take those same concept of how do I then get one of those relationships in my life, it's starting to apply the same framework. I find everything out about these people. I start to engage with them on social media. Maybe I invite them onto my podcast and say, hey, I'd love to bring you on to talk about all of your fitness knowledge. I could send a gift that is in relation to something that they're interested in. Maybe something unique that I found. Here's a really cool fitness product or tool or new bag or something interesting. Now, you might be saying, well, couldn't you just hire those people? Now, the fitness one, slightly different because the answer to that is yes. I could go and hire one of these trainers and you hire some of those people. But if the point of the Dream 100 is to level everything up and start to attract and bring these people into your life so that they're there and they're able to help improve your life and the other way around, I would much rather build it into a relationship. So we took the same concept and let's go to one of my two sons. And we said, well, you were interested in law. So who could help bring that into your life and maybe get you an internship at some point, maybe steer you in the right direction? Who would that be? So we started listing some of the big attorneys in the area. And there's lots and lots of attorneys. So we said, okay, great. Can we find all their social media? And we found all their social media in a minute. I mean, it's literally the exact same exercise. And I asked my son, I said, well, what if you were to build a relationship with one of these attorneys? What if that relationship started now? And he's 15. My other son's 15 as well, twin boys. So if you established a relationship now because you put in some work, you digitally stalked and got to know this attorney and multiple attorneys at the same time until one of them kind of checked that box and you finally got something, and you were to keep working and massaging that relationship, you're really setting yourself up for an amazing Dream 100 life, because as you then stack those relationships in all the areas that you're looking to expand and get better on, you now have some of the most powerful people that are going to continue to help you move that needle. Think about that. So I said, well, what if we were to start commenting on their social media and not just reaching out and saying, hey, do you have any internships, but rather deploying the exact same framework and same methodology, adding value, commenting really helpful, authentic things, sending gifts, inviting them to be on a podcast, promoting that. Think about if your kids, have their own podcast, for example, and even if they were just doing audio, And you're now interviewing people and being genuinely interested in them. And all of a sudden they've done all these interviews and they've got all these relationships before they've even walked into college or quote unquote the real world. Think about that and how well that could start to really set your life up. My other son, we were looking at the baseball side, and we said we really need to do better with the owner of the place that he goes and trains at. And I said, well, how could we add more value to his life? So we can help him with some of his marketing, his social media, help up the game there, and just continue to give value and stay in front of him so that he might then say, hey, can I introduce you to XYZ person? And you continue that, those daily singles that I've taught you. My daughter that was looking at the dance stuff, I said, well, what does that look like for you? So we realized that one of the dance studios that is based in New York City, they actually have like virtual training and they have other coaches and things like that. And we said, well, what if we were able to get in with somebody like that and you just started off providing value, giving ideas, commenting on their social media, just saying, I love everything. I love that you did this. That's so interesting. Would love to learn that one day. And you just started working those relationships. This isn't just for kids. I use that as an example because that's what I started doing with my family. But it didn't dawn on me until a couple of weeks ago that this whole concept of the Dream 100 is a relationship game. And everything that you want is ready for the taking, but it's that whole piece of being one relationship away from a totally unrecognizable business, a totally unrecognizable life. What if I had one of the most amazing fitness people that all of a sudden is in my network and just wants to help because I started off just being helpful and authentic to them? If I'm saying I want to transform my fitness and now you have that person in your corner, game over in a good way. If one of your kids had one or two or three or multiple relationships in different areas of their lives and they started planting those seeds now rather than when you need them, that's the issue, is that more often than not, you start when things are too late. You're looking for a job and you say, well, geez, I need to start networking immediately, but you should have been doing that 6, 12, 18 months beforehand. My challenge to you is to start to look at the different areas across your life. Look at health, look at fitness, look at family, look at spirituality, look at your customer service, your community service. Look at your friends and that network in general and start to look at the areas of your life and hone in on just one area. And instead of saying, well, what needs to change? Because that's kind of what we're taught. And that's what I've always been taught of. You go through the life wheel, and I do that exercise several times a year. Write down, grade my score of 2 out of 10 on the fitness side and what has to change to make it a 10. Instead of saying, what has to change? I want you to say, who do I need in my life that can bring that to a 10? You say fitness, money, whatever those are. Who, what relationship? Because you literally are one relationship away. I felt compelled to share this with you today because my kids loved it, I loved it, and I'm going to continue deploying the Dream 100 in the Dream 100. But also taking a new approach with this, how can I build a Dream 100 life by stacking relationships in all the different areas of my life? So yes, I want you to have a rocking business, lots of money, wealth, etc. But what if you had that in every other area of your life and it was a direct result of having those dream relationships in the different areas? Game over in a good way. Michael Tasner signing off. Catch you next week. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. See ya.